The board replaced me with a rookie. They didn't know I held the ultimate card for their ruin. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom swung shut, a final, definitive thud echoing the demise of a chapter. Outside, the world of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals hummed with the electric tension of ambition and impending change. Inside, however, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood, the muted hum of an expensive ventilation system, and the palpable, almost triumphant, silence that followed a declaration of corporate conquest. For the man at the head of the table, this silence was the sweet symphony of his ascendancy. For the man across from him, it was merely the quiet before a different storm, one he had patiently, meticulously prepared for. Orion, Thane Rexton's voice, a gravelly purr of self-satisfaction, cut through the quiet. He leaned back in his plush leather chair at the head of the immense mahogany table, a predatory smile stretching across his thin lips, revealing a flash of perfectly white teeth. His gaze, sharp and unyielding, fixed on Orion Blackwood, the man Thane believed he had just systematically dismantled. The scent of Thane's expensive cologne, a pungent mix of oud and ambition, seemed to fill the room, asserting his dominance. The board has reached a unanimous decision. Effective immediately, your services as Chief Scientific Officer and co-founder are no longer required. The words, though anticipated with a clarity that bordered on prescience, still hung in the air, heavy with their implications. For Orion, it was not a shock, but a confirmation, the triggering of a pre-calculated sequence. Around the table, the other board members, a collection of financial strategists and marketeers, shifted uneasily, the rustle of their tailored suits a soft counterpoint to the thud of the doors. Their eyes darted between Thane's triumphant sneer and Orion's own, seemingly impassive, face. Some offered fleeting glances of pity, a brief flicker of conscience in the corporate gladiatorial arena. Others, however, like the new, eager face of Kieran Vance, simply beamed with thinly veiled excitement. Kieran, barely 30, clutched a sleek tablet, its screen glowing faintly in the subdued light, his youth a stark contrast to Orion's 47 years and 2 decades poured into this very company. He was their chosen successor, their rookie, as Thane so dismissively, yet proudly, referred to him, a symbol of the new, ruthless efficiency Thane championed. Thane continued, his voice dripping with condescension, savoring each word like a fine wine. We appreciate your historical contributions, Orion. The early days, the foundational research, of course. But the market moves quickly. We need agility, decisive action, and most importantly, profitability. Your methodical approach, while perhaps admirable in theory, has become a hindrance. It stalls innovation, stifles rapid deployment. Kieran represents the future. He understands speed. He gestured vaguely towards Kieran, who nodded enthusiastically, a fresh-faced titan in the making, oblivious to the intricate web of power and betrayal being spun around him. A profound silence descended once more, heavier than before, pregnant with expectation. The room waited, poised. They expected an outburst, a furious retort, perhaps a desperate plea from the man who had poured his very soul into Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, the man whose name still graced the company's very identity. They expected the raw, visceral pain of betrayal to erupt, a scene of dramatic corporate downfall. But none came. Orion simply met Thane's gaze, his expression unreadable, a quiet ocean hiding unfathomable depths. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his lips. It was a smile devoid of mirth, yet brimming with a quiet certainty that defied the gravity of the moment, a certainty that spoke of control rather than defeat. Orion understands, he replied, his voice calm, measured, utterly devoid of emotion, each syllable carefully placed, a stone in a perfectly constructed wall. Orion wishes Kieran, and the company, all the best in their new direction. The use of his own name in the third person was a subtle, almost imperceptible declaration of detachment, a step back from the emotional chaos Thane expected. Thane's smile faltered, a flicker of something akin to confusion briefly crossing his features. He had anticipated a reaction, a struggle, a final, satisfying outburst. Orion's composure, his almost serene acceptance, was not in Thane's script. It was unsettling. The other board members, too, exchanged subtle glances, their initial pity morphing into a vague sense of unease. There was a curiosity gap forming, a silent question hanging in the air. Why is he so calm? What does he know that we don't? The Zeigarnik effect was beginning to hum, the unfinished business of Orion's dismissal leaving an inexplicable tension. They had just witnessed a corporate execution, yet the condemned walked away with an unnerving, almost victorious, tranquility. They didn't know it then, but the ultimate card, the one that would unravel their carefully constructed future, was already clutched firmly in Orion's hand. And it was a card they had utterly failed to see. His exit from the boardroom was unhurried, his gait as steady as if he were merely walking from one lab bench to another, leaving behind a wake of bewildered silence and the faint scent of something unidentifiable, a subtle chemical undertone that was uniquely his. To truly comprehend the intricate web of this particular corporate drama, one must first rewind, peel back the layers of time and ambition that sculpted Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. The company wasn't merely a business venture, it was, for Orion, a living extension of a profound scientific calling. 2 decades prior, alongside a brilliant, if somewhat naive, financial mind named Robert Vance, Kieran's father, ironically, Orion co-founded Blackwood with a singular, unwavering vision, to pioneer truly transformative biotechnological solutions that would alleviate human suffering, not just manage symptoms. Robert, a man of quick wit and charm, had navigated the complex world of investments, bringing in the initial capital. Orion, with his relentless scientific curiosity and methodical approach, had provided the foundational breakthroughs. Their partnership was a harmonious blend of pragmatic business acumen and idealistic scientific zeal. Robert had a genuine appreciation for the purity of scientific discovery, though his focus remained, understandably, on the financial viability. Their initial breakthroughs in gene therapy laid the groundwork, attracting early investors, among them a shrewd, hungry financier named Thane Rexton. Thane, initially, seemed a godsend, securing crucial funding and navigating the labyrinthine world of corporate finance, a pragmatic counterpoint to Orion's idealistic scientific zeal. In those nascent years, Blackwood was a crucible of innovation. The sprawling complex, once a dusty, abandoned textile factory, had been transformed into a gleaming temple of research. Orion's days were in relentless pursuit of scientific truth, long nights spent in the lab, meticulously refining protocols, testing hypotheses, and pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. The air in his lab was often thick with the scent of reagents and the quiet hum of sophisticated machinery. He often found himself lost in the intricate dance of molecules, the elegant logic of biological pathways, hours blurring into an unnoticeable continuum. The sacrifices were immense, personal relationships often took a back seat to the relentless demands of research. His apartment often resembled a sterile extension of the lab, filled with journals, schematics, and the lingering scent of ethanol. Yet, the work was its own reward. Each incremental discovery, each successful trial, fueled a profound sense of purpose. He was driven by a deep-seated belief that science, when pursued with integrity and foresight, could genuinely change the world, alleviate suffering, and truly leave a lasting mark on humanity. But as Blackwood grew, so too did Thane's influence, and with it, his fundamental shift in philosophy. The pursuit of profit began to overshadow the pursuit of progress, like a creeping shadow slowly engulfing the light. Quarterly reports became more critical than peer-reviewed papers. Speed to market trumped rigorous long-term safety studies. Thane started pushing for rapid expansion into new markets, often with less thoroughly vetted products, leading to minor but concerning efficacy issues and, on occasion, a quiet settlement with a disgruntled customer. He began to introduce aggressive cost-cutting measures that sometimes compromised the quality of raw materials or the thoroughness of preliminary trials. Orion found himself in increasingly heated arguments with Thane, defending the integrity of their research, insisting on exhaustive testing. Their relationship, once a symbiotic partnership, slowly but surely transformed into an uneasy alliance, then a thinly veiled antagonism. Thane saw Orion's methodical approach, his insistence on exhaustive testing, as an impediment to rapid scaling and immediate financial gratification. Orion, conversely, saw Thane's short-sighted avarice as a dangerous threat to the very ethical foundation upon which Blackwood was built, a betrayal of the initial vision he and Robert had shared. The rift widened, a chasm of values separating them. Robert Vance, observing the insidious changes, had quietly retired a few years prior, a quiet disappointment etched on his face, leaving his son, Kieran, to be drawn into Thane's orbit. The flashpoint, the undeniable wedge that drove them apart, was Etheria. Etheria wasn't just another drug, it was the culmination of years of Orion's life's work, a potential paradigm shift in regenerative medicine. It promised to revolutionize tissue repair at a cellular level, offering hope where previously there had only been despair. For Orion, Etheria was more than a compound, it was a testament to patience, meticulousness, and the unyielding pursuit of scientific perfection. But Etheria was also incredibly complex, its active compounds highly volatile. Early iterations had shown immense promise but also unpredictable side effects if not perfectly stabilized, ranging from localized inflammation to more systemic, concerning reactions in test subjects. This led Orion to a crucial, multi-year research endeavor, developing a proprietary stabilizing compound, a highly specific, complex molecular structure that not only neutralized Etheria's volatility but also enhanced its efficacy and safety profile. It was a chemical marvel, an elegant solution to a profound problem. This stabilizer, which Orion meticulously engineered and refined over countless sleepless nights, often in his private, independent lab space he maintained separate from Blackwood's main facilities, was the true genius behind Etheria's potential. It was unique, novel, and utterly essential. And this is where Orion's foresight, born from years of witnessing corporate compromises and anticipating the inevitable clash with Thane's short-term vision, manifested itself. He remembered countless discussions, heated arguments, where Thane would push for a faster drug development cycle, a streamlined approval process, even if it meant cutting corners. Thane had a ruthless efficiency that admired profit above all else. Orion, conversely, valued patient safety above all else, a principle he believed was non-negotiable. During the initial patenting phase for Etheria, a standard procedure dictates that intellectual property developed within the company belongs to the company. However, recognizing the critical importance of the stabilizer, and foreseeing a future where the board might prioritize speed over safety, Orion made a critical, strategic move. Through a series of carefully negotiated legal agreements, and by demonstrating that the fundamental, groundbreaking research for this specific stabilizing compound had been initiated and largely conducted by him independently, outside of Blackwood's core projects, often on his own time and with personal resources, before its integration into Etheria's final formulation, he secured the personal patent for the proprietary stabilizing compound. It was a subtle but profound distinction, a legal loophole he had meticulously carved out, a quiet act of defiance and protection. He had, years prior, established an independent research entity, Orion Scientific Ventures, a small, discrete operation used for his most speculative and personal research. It was under this entity that the foundational work for the stabilizer was done, providing the necessary legal separation. This ensured that while Blackwood Pharmaceuticals owned the patent for Etheria itself, Orion Blackwood, personally, held the exclusive rights to its essential, proprietary stabilizer. This was his ultimate card, his silent guardian, a failsafe against the very corporate hubris he knew was inherent in Thane's leadership. It was the crucial, yet unpublished, final test data for Etheria, linked inextricably to this stabilizer, that only Orion possessed. Without it, Etheria was merely a beautifully designed but inherently unstable chemical cocktail, a ticking time bomb. This was the ultimate card, the definitive leverage he knew he might one day need to protect Etheria, and more importantly, the patients it was meant to serve, from the very company he helped create. He had built his own failsafe, a final line of defense against corporate hubris. Orion's departure from Blackwood Pharmaceuticals was orchestrated with a deliberate, almost surgical precision. On the surface, he appeared compliant, a resigned scientist stepping aside for the new guard. In reality, every action he took in the days following his dismissal was a meticulously calculated step in a broader, silent campaign. The true plan wasn't about vengeance, it was about protecting the integrity of his life's work and, by extension, the lives of countless future patients. It was a commitment to the foundational principles Blackwood had once stood for. Thane Rexton, predictably, saw Orion's calm demeanor as weakness, a sign of a broken man accepting his fate. "He's lost his fire," Thane had been overheard remarking to a colleague, his voice thick with smug satisfaction during a celebratory lunch. "Too old, too slow. He'll fade into obscurity, a relic of a bygone era." This misinterpretation was precisely what Orion wanted. It fueled Thane's arrogance, blinding him further to the intricate trap Orion was setting. Thane's ego was a thick fog, obscuring his vision. Orion's first act was a seemingly innocuous one, the transition of his responsibilities to Kieran Vance. He presented himself as helpful, cooperative, even mentoring, embodying the patient, wise scientist passing on knowledge. He spent hours with Kieran in the lab, patiently explaining the intricacies of Etheria, the years of research, the delicate balance of its formulation. He talked extensively about the importance of rigorous testing, the critical role of the stabilizer, emphasizing the need for absolute precision. He answered all of Kieran's questions, seemingly holding nothing back. Yet, he subtly, almost imperceptibly, withheld the most crucial, the most granular details of the final safety test protocols and, more importantly, the unique access codes and encryption keys for the raw, unpublished data from Etheria's last critical phase of trials that were still technically ongoing, under Orion's personal oversight and analysis. Orion ensured that the data Kieran received was comprehensive enough to appear complete, a voluminous collection of spreadsheets and reports designed to look exhaustive. But it lacked the specific, nuanced parameters required to interpret the final, critical stability and long-term safety data. The missing piece wasn't merely a file, it was the specific lens through which the data could be understood, the complex algorithms Orion had developed to detect subtle degradation patterns that would escape conventional analysis. He archived the definitive, raw test results, along with his proprietary algorithms for their analysis, onto an encrypted, off-site server, accessible only by him. It was a digital ghost, a phantom limb of data that the company thought they had, but truly didn't. He left behind detailed, yet ultimately incomplete, spreadsheets and reports, designed to look exhaustive but lacking the keystone information. He provided Kieran with access to the company's internal servers, but carefully ensured that the specific, secure partition where his final, critical research notes and the rawest, most sensitive datasets for the stabilizer were stored, remained inaccessible, protected by layers of personal encryption and a bespoke authentication method only Orion possessed. It wasn't a malicious deletion, but rather a strategic obfuscation, making it seem like an oversight, a byproduct of a hasty transition. The final phase of stability testing is crucial, Kieran, Orion had stressed during one of their handover meetings, his gaze steady, his voice devoid of any hint of manipulation. Any deviation, any impurity in the stabilizing compound, it could be catastrophic. Kieran, eager to impress and perhaps a touch overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information, merely nodded, scribbling notes rapidly on his tablet. He was too focused on the grandeur of his new role, too consumed by the perceived simplicity of the next steps, market launch, to truly grasp the profound implications of Orion's words. He saw Etheria as a finished product, ready for consumption. He didn't understand it was still a delicate, living experiment, teetering on the precipice of stability. Thane, meanwhile, was relentless. He pushed Kieran to accelerate the market launch of Etheria, cutting through red tape, bypassing what he deemed unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles. He saw the drug as a golden goose, a guaranteed revenue stream that had been held back by Orion's excessive caution. He began to announce preliminary launch dates, publicizing the drug's astounding potential without the full, definitive safety profile. The stock price began to tick upwards, a direct correlation to Thane's aggressive marketing. He reveled in this, interpreting the market's positive response as validation of his decision to remove Orion. He held lavish press conferences, pre-launch parties, and spoke glowingly of a streamlined, efficient future. Days turned into weeks. Orion watched from a quiet distance, a silent observer in the unfolding drama. He received occasional updates from former colleagues, discreet messages hinting at the growing chaos within the R&D department. The whispers spoke of unexplained inconsistencies in batch tests, of Kieran's increasing frustration, of late nights spent trying to reconcile conflicting data. Kieran, out of his depth, struggled to replicate Orion's final stability tests. He couldn't access the specific parameters, couldn't interpret the subtle anomalies in the existing, incomplete data. He was missing the Rosetta Stone, the critical key to understanding the full picture. The Zeigarnik effect was now working on a grander scale. Etheria was an unfinished task, incomplete and dangerous, and the company, unaware of the missing pieces, was hurtling towards its own destruction. The curiosity gap, for those few who sensed something was amiss, grew wider with each passing day. Why couldn't they replicate Orion's results? What was so special about his methodology? Orion felt no malice, only a deep, somber certainty that his preventative measures were now proving necessary. Thane, oblivious to the underlying tremors, continued his victory lap. He held press conferences, toasted with champagne, and envisioned a future where Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, under his aggressive leadership, dominated the biotech landscape. He often referred to Orion's departure as shedding dead weight, a necessary pruning for robust growth. His hubris was a thick fog, obscuring the precipice just ahead. He believed he had won, that he had masterminded the perfect coup. He couldn't have been more wrong. The quiet man he dismissed was merely sharpening his blade, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The air in the grand ballroom of the Omni Convention Center crackled with anticipation, a vibrant hum of excitement and expectation. Thousands of investors, pharmaceutical executives, and media representatives were gathered for the much-hyped Future of Medicine Summit, the centerpiece of which was the official global launch of Etheria. A massive screen behind the podium displayed a slick, beautifully rendered animation of Etheria's supposed molecular action, painting a picture of scientific triumph and boundless hope. Spotlights crisscrossed the room, illuminating the faces of the powerful and the influential. Thane Rexton, resplendent in a tailored suit of charcoal gray, stood at the podium, basking in the glow of 1,000 camera flashes, his face radiating an almost evangelical zeal. Kieran Vance, looking slightly pale but immensely proud, stood beside him, clutching a pristine copy of the Etheria press kit. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thane's voice boomed, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, filling every corner of the vast ballroom. "Today marks a new era in human health. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals is proud to present Etheria, a revolutionary treatment poised to redefine regenerative medicine. This breakthrough, the culmination of years of dedicated research, will save lives, restore function, and usher in an age of unprecedented healing." A polite but enthusiastic applause rippled through the audience, punctuated by the excited chatter of reporters. Thane paused, allowing the moment to sink in, his eyes scanning the crowd, searching for any sign of dissent or discomfort, any lingering shadow from his recent corporate maneuver. He found none. His gaze lingered for a moment on a figure seated calmly in the third row, Orion. He was dressed simply, in a dark, understated suit, observing the spectacle with an almost detached analytical gaze, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Thane dismissed him with a triumphant smirk, convinced Orion was merely witnessing his absolute victory, a bitter man watching his successor bask in glory. Thane continued, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, leaning into the microphone as if sharing a profound secret, argued for more caution. For unnecessary delays. They simply didn't grasp the urgency, the potential for immediate impact. They were stuck in the past, bound by outdated protocols. But we, the visionaries at Blackwood, understood. We pushed forward. We took the necessary risks. And today, we deliver. He gestured dramatically towards the screen, where the image of Etheria shimmered, a beacon of progress, a promise of a healthier future. A low murmur started to spread through the audience, a subtle shift in the collective consciousness. It wasn't a murmur of excitement, but one of growing unease, like the distant rumble of thunder on a clear day. Several large screens mounted around the ballroom, typically displaying stock prices or product information, had suddenly shifted. They now displayed complex, scrolling lines of data, intricate charts, and molecular diagrams. It was scientific information, dense and seemingly impenetrable to the layperson, but its very presence was anomalous, jarring. On the main screen, the sleek animation of Etheria began to glitch, replaced by a flickering image of a molecular structure that appeared unstable, its bonds stretching and breaking, then reforming in chaotic, unpredictable ways. Thane's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. He looked at Kieran, who was frantically tapping on his tablet, his face paling, a cold sweat breaking on his brow. "What is this? Stop that feed." Thane hissed into his mic, unaware it was still live, his voice cracking with a rising panic. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through a section of the audience, quickly hushed. Just then, Orion's voice, calm and clear, cut through the rising confusion, amplified by a small, discreet microphone he had activated from his seat, a device seamlessly integrated into his lapel. It was a voice that commanded attention, a voice of quiet authority that demanded to be heard. "Orion assures you, Thane, the feed is quite accurate." All eyes swung to Orion. Thane's face contorted in a mask of fury, his earlier triumph dissolving into raw, impotent rage. "Orion, how dare you disrupt this event?" "Security," he bellowed, his voice no longer purring, but a desperate, animalistic roar. "Security will find nothing amiss, Thane," Orion replied, rising slowly. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, as if he were conducting a complex, delicate experiment, each step precise and calculated. "Orion is merely providing the full, unvarnished truth about Etheria. Something you deliberately chose to ignore." He walked towards the podium, the crowd parting before him like water, their faces a mix of confusion, shock, and dawning realization. Thane's security detail hesitated, unsure how to react to this calm, composed intrusion, this man who seemed to belong on the stage despite being uninvited. Kieran, meanwhile, stared at the flickering data on the screens, a dawning horror spreading across his face as he recognized patterns he had struggled to understand for weeks. "Orion asks you to observe those molecular structures," Orion said, gesturing towards the screens, his voice resonating with quiet power, filling the vast space. "Those are the real-time, unreleased final stability test results for Etheria's active compound. Data that, until this very moment, only Orion possessed. Data that, if correctly interpreted, reveals a fatal flaw." Thane recovered, his face a mask of bluster, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "Nonsense. He's a disgruntled ex-employee trying to sabotage our launch. The data is proprietary, owned by Blackwood. This is corporate espionage." "Ah, but there's the rub, Thane," Orion said, now standing directly beside him, his presence a stark, imposing contrast to Thane's flustered panic. His calm seemed to amplify Thane's agitation. "The core of Etheria's stability, its very safety, rests on a proprietary stabilizing compound. A compound which, while integrated into Etheria, is legally and irrevocably patented personally by Orion Blackwood." He held up a crisp, official-looking document, a certified copy of the patent for Blackwood Stabilizer Alpha 7, clearly listing him as the sole patent holder. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom, a wave of stunned realization. The curiosity gap, which had been slowly widening, now snapped shut with a resounding thud. The Zygarnik effect, the unfinished business of Orion's true power and foresight, was now being violently concluded, revealing the full scope of his strategic brilliance. Without this specific stabilizer, produced under Orion's precise, patented parameters, Orion continued, his voice gaining a quiet intensity that commanded absolute silence, Etheria's active compound is inherently unstable. It degrades rapidly, producing highly toxic byproducts. The data scrolling across these screens, which Orion is now pushing live to every major scientific journal and regulatory body globally, confirms this. Orion's final, unpublished tests showed that within 72 hours of administration, without the perfectly stable compound, Etheria transitions from a life-saving drug to a potent poison, capable of causing organ failure and even death. Thane's face went ashen, his jaw slack. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost, or perhaps, the end of his empire. That's impossible. We have the formula. Kieran, tell them, he stammered, turning to his protégé, his voice now a desperate plea. Kieran, his face a ghostly white, could only stammer, his carefully constructed facade crumbling into utter despair. We had the formula, but the final calibration, the raw data sets for the last 2 stages of optimization, we couldn't replicate them. We assumed it was just minor variations. We used the existing batches. Existing batches that relied on Orion's specific, patented manufacturing process for the stabilizer, and Orion's unique, irretrievable data for quality assurance. Orion finished for him, his gaze piercing Thane. A process, Thane, that you summarily dismissed, along with Orion, in your haste for profit. You have the recipe, but not the chef's critical, unwritten adjustments. You have the ingredients, but not the precise temperature and timing to prevent it from spoiling. And without Orion's personal patent license for the stabilizer, which Orion has now revoked, any large-scale production of Etheria is an infringement. And more critically, without Orion's final, critical safety data and the precise manufacturing protocol for the stabilizer, any production of Etheria is a public health catastrophe. The screens flickered, then settled on a single, damning image, a bold red warning label, superimposed over the unstable molecular structure of Etheria, stating, danger, highly toxic byproducts upon degradation without proper stabilization. Data provided by Orion Blackwood, patent holder of stabilizer Alpha 7. Immediate recall recommended. The ballroom erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashed, focusing now not on Thane, but on Orion, the quiet scientist who had just pulled the rug out from under an entire corporate empire. Thane Rexton, the self-proclaimed visionary, stood frozen, his face a mask of absolute, unadulterated shock, his triumph reduced to ashes. The ultimate card had been played, and it was checkmate. For Orion, it was not victory, but the profound, quiet satisfaction of a disaster averted, of a truth finally revealed. The aftermath of the Future of Medicine Summit was nothing short of cataclysmic for Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, a corporate implosion that reverberated across global markets with the force of a powerful earthquake. The revelation, delivered with such surgical precision and irrefutable evidence, shattered the company's reputation and sent its stock price into a freefall within minutes of Orion's public disclosure. The Zygarnik effect, which had subtly built suspense around Orion's quiet demeanor, now paid off in full, as the public, and indeed the entire industry, grappled with the shocking implications of a major pharmaceutical company nearly releasing a potentially toxic drug. The once bright beacon of Blackwood had become a symbol of corporate negligence. Thane Rexton's downfall was swift and brutal. The triumphant roar he had cultivated for years was replaced by a desperate, guttural cry for damage control. He tried to deny, to deflect, to discredit Orion's claims, but the irrefutable data, now disseminated globally by regulatory bodies and scientific journals, spoke for itself. The Securities and Exchange Commission, along with multiple federal health agencies, immediately launched investigations, their directives unyielding. Lawsuits from indignant investors and public health advocates began to pile up, forming an insurmountable mountain of legal challenges. News channels replayed the summit footage endlessly, the image of Thane's triumphant smile morphing into a horrified grimace becoming an iconic representation of corporate hubris, a cautionary tale for all to see. His board members, the very individuals who had so eagerly voted for Orion's dismissal, now turned on him, their faces a mixture of panic, regret, and thinly veiled contempt. They had been complicit in his recklessness, and now they faced the consequences, their own reputations tarnished. Kieran Vance, the ambitious rookie, was utterly devastated. The initial pride in his new position had curdled into profound shame and a palpable fear for his own career. He hadn't been malicious, merely inexperienced and perhaps too eager to please Thane, blinded by ambition and trust. He genuinely believed in Etheria's potential and had been misled by Thane's directives and Orion's seemingly cooperative handover. He issued a tearful public apology, acknowledging his oversight and praising Orion's scientific integrity, a stark contrast to Thane's defiant denials. It was a measure of his youth that he could still feel such remorse, a stark difference to the hardened callousness of Thane. Kieran would later seek Orion out, a quiet, humbling meeting where he expressed his profound regret and asked for guidance, truly beginning his path towards redemption. Within days, Etheria was pulled from all pre-market distribution channels, its launch a monumental failure. The initial batches, produced without Orion's patented stabilizer or the critical final quality control data, were quarantined and subjected to immediate, independent testing, confirming Orion's grim predictions. The company faced massive recalls, regulatory fines that threatened to bankrupt it, and a loss of public trust that would take decades, if ever, to rebuild. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, once a beacon of innovation, became a cautionary tale, a symbol of unchecked greed. The employees, many of whom had believed in the company's original vision and dedicated their lives to it, watched in horror as their livelihoods crumbled around them. There was anger, yes, but also a deep sense of betrayal, as the truth of Thane's reckless pursuit of profit became undeniable. As for Orion, he remained outwardly calm throughout the tumultuous period. The immediate aftermath brought a deluge of media requests, accolades from the scientific community, and inquiries from other, more ethically driven biotech firms. He meticulously provided all necessary information to the investigating bodies, ensuring that the full scope of Thane's negligence, and his own proactive measures to prevent a disaster, were clearly documented. There was no gloating, no self-righteous triumph. His actions had been purely about safeguarding human lives and the integrity of science. The satisfaction was not in Thane's downfall, but in the knowledge that a catastrophe had been averted, that his life's work, and the patients it was meant to serve, had been protected. The quiet, analytical mind that had built Etheria was now systematically dismantling the threat it posed, ensuring that the unfinished business of its safety was finally, definitively, concluded. 6 months later, the dust had begun to settle, though the scars on Blackwood Pharmaceuticals ran deep, a testament to the cost of corporate hubris. The company, teetering on the brink of insolvency, a hollowed-out shell of its former self, was eventually acquired by a consortium of ethical investors and scientific philanthropists, led by a renowned bioethicist. They pledged to restore its original vision of integrity and patient-centric research, to rebuild it from the ground up on a foundation of sound scientific principles. Thane Rexton, stripped of his assets and facing multiple federal indictments for fraud and reckless endangerment, had vanished from the public eye, his name synonymous with corporate malfeasance. His empire, built on ambition and greed, had crumbled into dust, a stark reminder that some foundations are built on sand. Orion's own life, however, had undergone a profound, yet peaceful, transformation. The initial media frenzy subsided, replaced by a quiet respect from the scientific community, who lauded his foresight and ethical courage. He chose not to return to the revamped Blackwood, recognizing that his path lay elsewhere, one not bound by corporate structures. Nor did he seek to establish a new corporate empire. Instead, he established a specialized research foundation, the Etheria Integrity Initiative, dedicated to promoting ethical drug development and providing independent oversight for novel compounds. The foundation, funded by grants and the licensing fees from his stabilizer patent, which he carefully relicensed to a company committed to rigorous safety protocols, now worked to ensure that no promising drug would ever again be rushed to market without exhaustive, transparent safety data. It was a quiet revolution, building a new standard for the industry. Kieran Vance, having learned a brutal but invaluable lesson, dedicated himself to working with Orion's foundation. He channeled his youthful ambition into a genuine passion for ethical science, eager to atone for his past oversights. He was determined to redeem himself, to contribute to a future where profit did not supersede patient well-being. He became one of Orion's most trusted collaborators, his energy and newfound wisdom proving to be a powerful force for good, a testament to the possibility of redemption and growth. Etheria itself was not abandoned. Under Orion's guidance and with the necessary funding for proper, extended trials utilizing his patented stabilizer and rigorous testing protocols, the drug was systematically re-evaluated. The initial promise was still there, untainted by the prior corporate negligence, simply needing the integrity it had always deserved. Eventually, after years of meticulous, ethical development and exhaustive safety assurances, Etheria was finally brought to market, this time as a genuine, life-saving breakthrough, a testament to what pure scientific pursuit could achieve when unburdened by unchecked greed. Its success was a quiet, profound vindication, not of Orion's personal triumph over Thane, but of the principles he had always championed. Orion's days were now filled with the profound satisfaction of truly impactful work. He lectured at universities, consulted with regulatory bodies, and mentored a new generation of scientists, instilling in them the critical importance of integrity, foresight, and patience in the face of pressures for quick gains. He found a profound peace in the knowledge that he had not only protected his life's work but had also contributed to a paradigm shift in how the industry approached ethical responsibility. The quiet certainty he had carried in the boardroom, the hidden knowledge of his ultimate card, had not been about revenge, but about safeguarding a higher truth, ensuring that science served humanity, not just profit. The journey of Orion Blackwood serves as a poignant reminder that true value often lies not in immediate gratification or superficial triumphs, but in foresight, integrity, and the courage to stand by one's convictions, even when faced with overwhelming opposition. In a world often driven by short-term gains and ruthless ambition, it is the quiet strength of unwavering principles, the meticulous preparation of a contingency plan, and the profound wisdom to play one's ultimate card at precisely the right moment, that ultimately determines not just success, but lasting impact and true justice. The seeds of destruction are often sown by unchecked arrogance, while the quiet gardener, patiently tending to the unseen roots of truth, holds the power to restore balance and cultivate a future of genuine progress. If Orion's story of quiet strength and ultimate justice resonated with you, then you're in the right place. Our channel is dedicated to unraveling tales of unexpected triumphs, where integrity prevails over deceit, and foresight outsmarts even the most cunning adversaries. We believe there's immense power in stories that remind us of the enduring value of patience, intelligence, and unwavering principle. Don't miss out on more narratives that champion justice and reveal profound life lessons. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when we release a new story. Now, we're genuinely curious to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone underestimated you, only for you to reveal an unexpected strength or plan? Or perhaps, what's the most impactful lesson you've learned about navigating betrayal and injustice in your own life? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We read every single one.